So the bracket is out. UConn gets a matchup as UConn being the 5 seed gets the 12 seed in New Mexico State. So I've got on a guy who's covered this team all season, Colin Deaver. He's from KTSM 9 News, and he's here to help us get a bit of a breakdown on this New Mexico State team. So Colin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's the best time of year. My favorite events to cover in the world is the NCAA tournament, specifically the first and second rounds. So yeah, it's an exciting time. Hopefully, as we were talking before we started recording about trying to get up to Buffalo, and it's quite the trek from the El Paso Las Cruces region to
Yes.
Western New York. So we're gonna do our best. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely not the easiest of trips for you guys. I'm curious for fans, from up here in Connecticut. I'm not sure how many have necessarily paid attention to the WAC into New Mexico State basketball. Can you give us just a little bit of a breakdown on the season they've had, and just give us some initial thoughts on this team?
So I've been in this business. This is now 10 years. I've covered the Pac-12, the Big 12, the SEC, the Southland Conference, the WAC, Conference USA. This is hands down, it's not even close, the most up and down basketball team that I have ever covered in my life. You look at their record, they're 26-6, they're 79th in the net, they are 81st in KenPom. They have one of the top players, they're the WAC player of the year, and Teddy Allen averaging almost 20 points a game. He is starred at Nebraska and West Virginia earlier in his career. They have pieces to make a Sweet 16. They do. They also lost to Chicago State this year, which is one of the worst basketball teams in college basketball over the last 10 years. So the number one thing you have to know about New Mexico State is that they are incredibly inconsistent. They are absolutely capable of walking into Buffalo on Thursday night and beating UConn, maybe by 15 points. They are also incredibly capable of walking into Buffalo on Thursday night and losing to UConn by 30 points. It just is a matter of which team shows up on a given night. And I have, lots of stats that kind of will back that up, just how up and down they are. They do some things well. They do some things not very well. But the number one thing is just like their highs are just, they can be incredibly high. Their lows can be incredibly low. And you don't really know which team is going to show up every single day. They get 26-6, but a lot of those wins by virtue of playing in the WAC, which isn't a great league. It's better. It was a lot better this year than it has been in the past, but still not a great league. So a lot of those wins by virtue of being in the WAC. So we shall see, I guess.
Take us through what makes this New Mexico State team good when they're having a good day.
Number one on the list would be Teddy Allen. Again, WAC player of the year, averaged 17 a game in the Big Ten last year at Nebraska, was on a West Virginia team in 2018 that I believe made the Sweet 16. What he is on, he's 6'6", shoots from, he can hit shots that you're just unbelievable shots. Like you can't imagine him, anybody making shots like that, especially in the WAC. He dropped 41 points on Abilene Christian in a game this year. He had 33 against Seattle, multiple 30-point games. He had 30 at Grand Canyon. Like, he can score. People talk about, guys that kind of get the casual fan interested in March Madness for an underdog team. Teddy Allen fits that narrative to a T. So if he can get going, that's, to me, he's the biggest key to NMSU pulling off an upset. If he has a big game against UConn, I think NMSU could get it done. If he doesn't, then it's going to be tough. And I think even though he's 6'6", 225, whatever he is, I'm sure UConn's going to have some guys to throw at him. So that would be one way. The other way is, they shoot just 32.7% from three on the year. However, they have multiple games, and you look at their best games of the year. Mm-hmm. They shot very well from three as a team. They beat Davidson. That was probably their best win of the season. Went 11 for 25. At Stephen F. Austin, they made 14. Grand Canyon, they made 13. But then they kind of have different ways to beat you. They rebound well, not as well as UConn does, but they're looking at the rebounding margin stats on NCAA.com. UConn is 8th in rebounding margin for the season. New Mexico State is 14th. So they do rebound pretty well. So it's just that's going to be kind of the matter of is Teddy Allen going nuts? That's one. Two is are there 3-point shots falling? Because they're going to take a lot of threes. They're and it's a matter of whether or not they're going to be going in. They're going to take a lot of threes, and then the rebounding. I mean, if Adama Sanogo is killing them on the glass, which he has done a lot this year to teams everywhere, I think it's going to be tough for New Mexico State if they can kind of control the glass like they do a lot of the time, albeit in the WAC. Then I think they'll have a chance. I will say this: I think this is as tough of a matchup. Like, I'm not saying this is an easy matchup by any means for New Mexico State. Of the 5 seeds, like of Iowa, of UConn, St. Mary's, and Houston, I do like this matchup better for New Mexico State than any of the other 3, because they will play slow, and like UConn, you know, their paces are fairly similar according to Ken Palm. So I that's one of the reasons I kind of like the matchup a little bit, but again, we'll see when they step on the court on Thursday.
So then looking at the flip side here, so, you know, when they're on, Teddy Allen's going off, they're hitting threes, they're crashing the glass. What happens when they lose to a team like Chicago State? What are they doing wrong there?
Well, that game they only had 8. I will say they only had 8 available players. So
Okay.
that was number one. But there were a lot of other things on court that made it so that the best team in the WAC, 12 seed in the NCAA tournament, lost to one of the worst teams in college basketball. They are very turnover prone, 294th in the nation turnovers per game. That's 14 a game. So UConn's probably going to be able to turn them over. And that, you know, obviously can lead to easy baskets the other way. It's been an issue for New Mexico State all season long. And actually, I would say this is a reason for why I would think New Mexico State could get it done, is they play up and down to their competition a lot. Obviously, you imagine NCAA tournament game against a 5 seed in what is probably going to be something like a road game in Buffalo. You would think they'd probably get up for it, but you never know. I mean, it's just, they're so up and down. So I just think the turnovers, and then, you know, Allen, as good as he is, he's been at 5. This is his 5th school, I think. So he's gotten into arguments on the sideline with the head coach, Chris Jans. In game, he was basically benched for the last 7 minutes of the Chicago State game. And, you know, if that happens in an NCAA tournament game, like, you know, that's probably it for the Aggies 2022 season. I don't foresee that happening in a tournament game. Like I said, I think like they're going to get up for this one. Teddy Allen said in their press conference after getting selected today, like we're not going up there to lose. So, I mean, they're confident. They're a confident team. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, I think it's going to be tough.
So you've mentioned Teddy Allen's name a lot. Give me a couple other names of guys that UConn fans should be looking out for on this New Mexico State team.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jabari Rice. He's their second leading scorer, kind of the head of the snake. Their best on-ball defender from a guard standpoint. Also averages double figures, rebounds the ball very well. He's just been around for a while. You know, you can say that about a lot of guys, like in kind of the COVID era of college sports, but Rice has been at New Mexico State. He redshirted in 2017, 2018. So, you know, Rice is a guy that can kind of make things go for them, averages 12 a game. Beyond him, Johnny McCants is a 6th-year senior. And that's the other thing about this Aggie team. They're just very experienced. They have guys that have been playing college basketball for a long time. Johnny McCants, his numbers on the stat sheet, if UConn fans go look him up, it's not eye-popping. He averages like 9 and 5 a game. But he just does so many things that kind of like lead to winning. I describe him as like a homeless man's Draymond Green, because of how they use him. They'll use him as like the roll man in pick and rolls, and he passes very well out of that. So there's been games where McCants is just, you know, picking people apart as like the decision maker out of a pick and roll. Clayton Henry is just kind of a role player, not good 3-point shooter this year. He shot 35% from 3 this season. So that's one of those guys, like if he's knocking down threes, you know, that's the anatomy of an upset. And then I guess inside, it'll be interesting to see if Donnie Tillman plays. He started his career at Utah, was Pac-12 sixth man of the year at Utah, went to UNLV. He's been injured a lot this year. When he plays well, the Aggies usually play pretty well. And then last guy I'll mention is this is a guy who probably just looks the part, looks like he could play in the Big East. Will McNair is a center, probably 6'10", 270 pounds, like big guy. Finishes well around the rim, but more or less kind of needs other people to like create for him. He doesn't really have like an offensive game. So that would be like the starting 5-6-man scattering report on the Aggies.
When it comes to the head coach here, take us through and give us a little background on Chris Jans here and his style of coaching and what he brings to this program.
So Jans comes from the Greg Marshall coaching tree at Wichita State. I think UConn fans will probably remember Marshall from their time in the American as a fairly fiery guy. Got himself fired for it. Jans is fiery, not on that level of a Greg Marshall, but he is intense, man. He expects a lot. He's from small town Iowa, kind of teaches like a hard-nosed game. That's why his teams are usually pretty good rebounding teams, because he teaches it. He emphasizes it. I've been a little surprised and also not surprised at the same time that he hasn't moved up. He was the head coach at Bowling Green in 2014-15, got fired after one season for an incident at a bar, which he's owned up to and has many times said, hey, yeah, I did it and lost my job because of it. And he's at NMSU and for 5 years has been more or less a model citizen at New Mexico State as the head coach, and has been to 3 NCAA tournaments. They've almost pulled a couple of upsets. So I think if they can get an upset this year, you'll probably see Jans, his name really start circulating. He almost got the UTEP job last year. He almost got the East Tennessee State job 2 years ago. But I think if they can pull an upset, or even if they don't, but especially if they pull an upset of UConn, I think you're going to see his name really circulating for some better jobs.
I'll get you out of here on this one. What was his reaction to facing UConn? I saw the clip you put out earlier. I retweeted it. It was hilarious. He almost spit out his water. Was he spitting out his water at the fact they were a 12 seed, the fact it was UConn? What do you find out about that?
I think it was more that the fact that they were a 12 seed, because Joe Lunardi, Jerry Palm, I mean, for weeks, really the last 2 or 3 weeks since they lost to Chicago State, they were on that 13 line, that even that 14 seed line. So I think he was expecting that. The last projection had them, both Palm and Lunardi had them as a 13 seed going to play UCLA in Portland, Oregon. And so I think it was 2 things. It was the fact that they were a 12 seed, and then also they were the 6th team in the entire tournament announced. So it was so quick. Yeah. The team itself hadn't even made it to the watch party yet. They were like eating pizza downstairs. And then all of a sudden, like, Jans is the only one up there with the team, basically. So I think it was mostly that. He said in his press conference after they got selected that he hasn't seen a UConn game all year. Obviously has respect for him. He knows, I'm sure, has a general idea of how they play. Dan Hurley is well known. The Big East is very well known. But he said, yeah, I don't know a lot about them. And so I'm sure they're deep in preparation for the Huskies right now, and it's going to be quite the preparation for RJ Cole and Adama Sanogo for sure.
Colin, I really appreciate the time, and thanks for helping fill us in on this Mexico State team.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.